What is poppin' YouTube? Doing my rest of season rankings so that you know how I value your team heading into the playoffs. Starting off with the running backs in the S tier, we got Christian McCaffrey. No reason to have anyone else here besides Christian McCaffrey. He's head and shoulders above every other running back in fantasy football. Have him here in our S tier. Then we move on to our A tier. We got Travis Etienne, Kyron Williams, Bijan Robinson, Devon, Jahmyr Gibbs, Alvin Kamara, Isaiah Pacheco, and Tony Pollard. And yes, this is a little bit different than what was happening last week when we were doing our rest of season rankings. A few things have changed. Situations have changed. Also, the upcoming schedule. So when we start off in the A tier with Travis Etienne, of course, no Trevor Lawrence. You think that would hurt Travis Etienne's overall upside, but I don't think it is because I think the volume is actually going to increase. Their schedule coming up makes me very confident in Travis Etienne here as my RB2. Then move on to Kyron Williams, who has shown nothing but being the stud that he was pre-injury, coming off of post-injury. So last week we had Kyron Williams as our RB5 rest of the season. He got that bump up to RB3 rest of the season for us this week. We then move on to Bijan Robinson. Absolutely love his schedule down the stretch. I think his upside is absolutely amazing. I think you could make the debate between any of these rookie running backs, between Bijan, Devon, Jahmyr, which one you like. And to be honest, I think all of them come with their little bit of a different situation. Devon's playing in the best offense. Jahmyr Gibbs is battling for touches with David Montgomery, but short lines absolutely love to run the ball. And Bijan Robinson with Arthur Smith, you never know what's going to be happening on a game-by-game basis. So for me, depends on how you rank those guys. I have Bijan first, then Devon, Jahmyr Gibbs. Alvin Kamara, absolutely PPR machine. His schedule isn't as great down the stretch, but if you're playing in a PPR format, which we are doing these rankings based on, Alvin Kamara, he is in our A tier. Then we move on to Isaiah Pacheco, and absolutely love some Isaiah Pacheco and his overall ranking here down the stretch. Love some Isaiah Pacheco. That volume should be good. The Kansas City Chiefs offense hasn't been where we would hope it to be, but even still, Isaiah Pacheco is playing for the Kansas City Chiefs. He'll get plenty of scoring opportunities. And then rounding out with Tony Pollard, the Dallas Cowboys offense down the stretch has some great matchups. Even this week, though, it is against the Philadelphia Eagles. In the next coming weeks, I like some Tony Pollard. Like the volume that he's getting. Yes, has the overall upside this season. Maybe not been there, no, but I think he continues to have a strong push towards the end of the season. Then we move on to our B tier. We got Josh Jacobs, Rachaad White, Zach Moss, David Montgomery, Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler, Saquon Barkley, DeAndre Swift. Josh Jacobs, great volume down the stretch. I mean, he was the leading rusher last season. Not that it matters this season at all with Josh Jacobs. The thing that makes me excited about Josh Jacobs is just his overall snap share that he is getting in the overall volume. Have to have him here leading off the B tier. Then we move on to Rachaad White, who for each and every part is having an absolute fabulous season. So maybe Rachaad White should have been ahead of Josh Jacobs. Maybe even made the argument above Tony Pollard. These guys are so close. Still have Rachaad White here in our B tier. Absolutely love it. Then we have Zach Moss. We don't know when Jonathan Taylor is going to come back. I know there were some reports that maybe Jonathan Taylor was going to come back this week. I don't think that's the case. I also don't think Jonathan Taylor is coming back next week. So if we're looking into the playoff schedule, Zach Moss, I think, is going to be almost maybe a league winner for you if you somehow were able to keep him and or get him off waivers here over the last few weeks, like Zach Moss here in our B tier. Then we move on to David Montgomery, and David Montgomery's taken a clear step back, the 1B to Jahmyr Gibbs. But if the positive for David Montgomery is that snap share has been going up week after week after week, which makes us excited for his long-term potential. Then we move on to Derrick Henry. Absolutely love Derrick Henry's playoff schedule down the stretch. Austin Eckler, Saquon Barkley, DeAndre Swift here in our B tier. Then we move on to our C tier, and we have Javonte, Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker. When we're starting with these guys, all volume. Now, they all have their warts in terms of Javonte. He's not having as many scoring opportunities, but he is getting the volume. Breece Hall is getting the volume, playing on a terrible offense. Kenneth Walker's recovering from injury, still having to fight with Zach Charbonnet on his roster, but have them all here in our C tier. Probably starting them depending on your overall running back depth in this landscape. Then move on to Joe Mixon, and honestly, Joe Mixon, Jake Browning looked pretty good this last week, but it was more passing. The running attack didn't seem to get it going with that offensive line for the Bengals. Brian Robinson, Sam Howell is passing the ball at a clip that is absolutely amazing. So it's really touchdown or bust for Brian Robinson if he can get that volume, which has tended to go down a little bit here as of late. Then we move on to James Cook, and a lot of you were upset that James Cook was not on my rankings last week. James Cook continues to impress week after week after week, especially last week, having the type of reception day that he did makes us excited for James Cook heading on. If he can be that reception type back that we knew he could be out of college, we are excited. Then we got Raheem Mostert, who, of course, being the 1B, kind of same situation as David Montgomery, been an absolute top 5 running back for you, just due to the injuries to Devon this season. But I think as we go down the stretch, they're going to be leaning on Devon and his overall upside a little bit more. Not to say that you can't start Raheem Mostert in your RB2 spot or as a flex, but I like him a little bit less. And then ending off with Jaylen Warren, who has really been the more explosive running back in this Pittsburgh Steelers backfield. Of course, Najee Harris has been able to get some touchdowns. I prefer Jaylen Warren, especially this week. I absolutely love some Jaylen Warren heading down the stretch. Then we move on to our D tier, and we got James Conner, Jerome Ford, Jonathan Taylor, Gus Edwards, Najee Harris, Alexander Madison, Zach Charbonnet, Chuba Hubbard. Like some of these volumes, of course, Jonathan Taylor, if he comes back from injury, that should be able to help him out. Moving on to our wide receiver rankings rest of season, we started off with the S tier. We got Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Stephon Diggs, and Justin Jefferson. Welcome back to the rest of season rankings. Justin Jefferson, especially in the S tier. And yes, all these guys, Tyreek Hill is probably in an S tier of his own, but we still included him here. CeeDee Lamb still for me over AJ Brown, just based off of the recency bias, but I absolutely love AJ Brown's schedule coming down the ring. Amon-Ra St. Brown, PPR God. Then you got Stephon Diggs versus Justin Jefferson. I still have Stephon Diggs a little bit ahead just because his Buffalo Bills offense has been struggling. We know he's he's getting targeted by Josh Allen compared to Justin Jefferson with Josh Dobbs, but you can't put Justin Jefferson any lower. Moving on to our A tier here, we got Keenan Allen, Mike Evans, Jamar Chase, Brandon Ayuk, DJ Moore, Michael Pittman. And Keenan Allen, only part of this Chargers offense that is humming. Mike Evans, absolute touchdown machine, touchdown god. We love to see what Mike Evans is doing. Jamar Chase proved. It doesn't matter. He's kind of quarterback proof. So maybe you could make the argument that Jamar Chase should be leading off this tier. I just think when we're really looking at rest of the season rankings, we do have to take into account the situation, the quarterback play. So we will have Jamar Chase here. Brandon Ayuk, man, if Brandon Ayuk could get more volume, I mean, Deebo Samuel has been coming on as of late. I think we could push Brandon Ayuk maybe a little bit higher, but just based on the volume, based on who he's competing with this offense between DMC, Deebo Samuel, makes me a little bit more worried about Brandon Ayuk. So I still have him here in A tier. Then we got DJ Moore, who's absolutely emerged ever since Justin Fields has come back from that injury. And then Michael Pittman Jr., welcome to the A tier in the rest of season rankings. We all see what Michael Pittman Jr. is doing on his consistency basis. Then we move on to our B tier. We lead it off with Puka Nacua, and Puka Nacua has been absolutely having a fantabulous season. You could honestly put Puka Nacua maybe ahead of Michael Pittman. I think that was a debate for me, but ended up putting Puka Nacua here in our B tier. Devontae Adams, a lot of you were upset where I had him in my weekly rankings this week, but Devontae Adams, we don't love his situation. We don't love his quarterback play, but he's still getting the volume. Then Devontae Smith, the 1B to AJ Brown, 1A. Deebo Samuel, congratulations, making it up to the B tier. He was in our C tier last week. Deebo showing that maybe they were just waiting until the end of season really to get Deebo Samuel going to protect him from some of the injuries that had been wearing and tearing on him the last 2 seasons. Like to see what's happening for Deebo here. Nico Collins is the clear wide receiver 1 on the Texans, so maybe you could have made the case for Nico ahead of Deebo. I just still had Nico a little bit behind, especially with some of the matchups that they have coming up. Then ending this tier off with Jalen Waddle, and yes, Jalen Waddle is still more of a projection than it might be the actual play, so you might be able to debate that some of these guys coming down in the C tier should be above Jalen Waddle. I just like this Dolphins offense so much, and I just think at some point Jalen Waddle is going to get a piece of it. Then we move on to our C tier. We got DK Metcalf. We saw what he did last week versus the Cowboys. We'll see what he does this week. Chris Olave absolutely coming on 2 20-point performances back to back. Hopefully you traded for some Chris Olave. We'll see who the quarterback is down the stretch. Zay Flowers, if you see the splits with Mark Andrews and without Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers absolutely balling as the wide receiver 1 option in this Baltimore Ravens offense. Have him here in our C tier. And we ended with Cooper Kupp here in the C tier. The thing with Cooper Kupp, with those ankle injuries, we're a little bit concerned about that coming down the stretch, but still have to have him here. He does provide a ton of upside. Cortland Sutton, Garrett Wilson to round out our C tier. Moving on to our D tier, we got Calvin Ridley, Rashee Rice, DeAndre Hopkins, Drake London, Terry McLaurin, Adam Thielen. A lot of these receivers, there's either the potential for them to do better, but they haven't necessarily put it on week after week after week, and or they're talented wide receivers in situations that we're just not happy about, like Calvin Ridley without Trevor Lawrence, Adam Thielen with Bryce Young, where maybe they have had some really great performances this year, but they just haven't ended up performing week after week after week. And rounding out our E tier here in the wide receiver landscape, we will be going with Deontay Johnson, Hollywood Brown, Christian Watson, Josh Downs, JSN, Amari Cooper, Jordan Addison, and T. Higgins. Deontay Johnson, yes, the volume just hasn't been there. I mean, the touchdowns are really saving some of Deontay Johnson's day, which is crazy that he's regressing in the touchdown category. Would have never thought that for Deontay Johnson. Hollywood and Kyler haven't necessarily got it going to the extent that we thought they would, but hopefully they can get it going because it's Arizona Cardinals offense. I like their schedule down the stretch. Christian Watson has proven that he's taken over that wide receiver 1 role for the Packers, even though we didn't see it those first few weeks off of injury. Josh Downs, incredible rookie season that Josh Downs is having. He let us down big last week, but we'll see what he does in this coming weeks. JSN is overtaking Tyler Lockett as the wide receiver 2 on the Seahawks. Amari Cooper with these backup quarterbacks, it hasn't been great, but he's still the clear wide receiver 1 option on the Cleveland Browns offense. Jordan Addison taking the backseat to Justin Jefferson being back. It's pushed down our rankings rest of the season, and then rounding it out with T. Higgins here at the end of the E tier. We saw what Jake Browning could do. We liked what Jamar Chase was able to do with Jake Browning. We don't send T. Higgins to the bottom of our bench. T. Higgins is still a valuable asset to us, rounding out our wide receivers. Moving on to our quarterback rankings, and not a lot has changed here. Still in our elite category for quarterbacks, we still have Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. Honestly, with Jalen Hurts potentially being injured, you might be able to debate Josh Allen versus Jalen Hurts as the QB1 rest of the season. I still have Jalen Hurts here. Moving on to our every week QB1s, we got CJ Stroud, Dak Prescott, Lamar, Tua, Justin Herbert. You might be able to debate the Lamar versus Tua, but really at this point, it's every week QB1. So however you like the flavor, I like Tua, of course, with throwing to Tyreek, with Devon in the backfield, with Jalen Waddle coming on the other side of Tyreek Hill. Just your flavor there. Justin Herbert hopefully can get it going. Brandon Staley is probably going to get fired, but we'll see what ends up happening this season. Lower in QB1s. I mean, Kyler Murray, we keep wanting to put him up into the every week QB1s. You're probably starting Kyler Murray if you have him, just because you probably are lacking another option at quarterback. But I still have Kyler Murray here leading off the lower end QB1s. Within Justin Fields, Brock Purdy, Sam Howell, and Jared Goff. Yes, some of you commented, why was Jared Goff in the streamers last week? Honestly, he was, but with Trevor Lawrence getting injured, Jared Goff gets the bump up this week into our lower end QB1s. Then with our streamer options, we got Jordan Love, Geno Smith. Congratulations, Geno. Based on on what you did against the Dallas Cowboys, I think we can start to consider you again in fantasy football if it's a desperate situation. Trevor Lawrence ends up here in the streamers just because we don't know how long this injury is going to keep him out. If for some reason he comes back in the playoffs, I think he could be potentially worth a stream. And then ending it off with Will Levis, big armed Will. They're really, the quarterback landscape outside of this is pretty dire. Maybe Matthew Stafford or Russell Wilson, you could argue on a week-to-week basis, might potentially be able to be a streamer, but I would prefer all of those guys over them rest of season. And rounding out our rest of season rankings, we will end with our tight ends. And in our elite tight end 1 category, we got Travis Kelce, TJ Hawkinson, Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid, and Trey McBride. All these guys, elite level tight ends. Yes, of course, I still prefer Travis Kelce, TJ Hawkinson to Sam Laporta and Dalton Kincaid as the rookies. Trey McBride coming on in a sophomore season, absolutely great. But if you have any of these guys in your tight end spot, you should feel really great about where you're projecting rest of season. Then we move on to our starting tight ends, and we got George Kittle, Dallas Goedert coming off of injury, Jake Ferguson, Evan Ingram, Taysom Hill, Dalton Schultz. Now, Taysom Hill, Dalton Schultz making this might be a surprise to you, but Taysom Hill is being on an absolute heater. They're using him out of the backfield. He's getting touchdowns, throwing for touchdowns, catching touchdowns. Absolute versatile player is what Taysom Hill has been and continues to be. So if you're absolutely desperate at tight end, Taysom Hill is definitely worth a look. And or if you already have Taysom Hill, I still have him honestly as a starting tight end rest of the season. Dalton Schultz with CJ Stroud, we know what that is looking like. And then adding into the potential category, we have Pat Freiermuth, and we've talked pretty heavily about Pat Freiermuth as someone that we like rest of the season. Last week he was in the starting tight end. I bumped him down just because of how the Steelers offense continues to struggle. We got Isaiah Likely taking over from Mark Andrews. If you are desperate and you have to go with Isaiah Likely on a week-to-week basis, I do like that upside. Aaron Waller is supposed to come off of IR, so that's why we have him here in our potential tight ends. Kyle Pitts, Zach Ertz, depending on where he signs, might be able to provide some type of value, but I don't really bank on it. And then Cole Kmet, just with Justin Fields being back, providing some relevancy. So I appreciate you guys so much for tuning into this video. Hit the like button, hit that subscribe button. We won't be streaming this week at all, so leave your start sit question down below. Let me know how your team's looking as we head into the playoffs. Appreciate you guys tuning in, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.